We are back on MorningLine. Our guest is Dr. Erin Calipari. She's from Vanderbilt, where she's an assistant professor of pharmacology. She's really good. And
well, I'll have to play this for my bosses.
Well, so you should.
Well, not the,
I mean,
the part where you say that.
I just love the way that you're very frank about it, and you lay out the basics. We're talking about the effects of opioids and some of these drugs on brain chemistry and body chemistry, which we don't pay enough attention to try to explain why the addiction is so powerful. And I wanted to ask you then. So, I mean, intellectually, someone like myself, if I were to be exposed to an opioid and recognize that I'm feeling an addiction coming on, I'd say, okay, gosh, I really crave this. And I'd kind of think to myself, I would think, well, I need help with this. And I wonder, do other people do it? And I think that's a simplification. I'm guessing that I wouldn't be able to control it, and people can't. It's not that someone's weak, that they can't fight it. I think I would be as susceptible as anyone else.
Yeah, so when we think of addiction, I think that one of the things we think about most is we think about drug use. We say, oh, well, addiction is somebody craving drug, wanting drug, all of these things, and it's all in our conceptualization about drug. But when we make decisions in an environment, we're not just saying, should I do this or not? There's always something else we're choosing it over. If let's say I wanted to eat an entire cake, like, I could do that, but I might feel sick after. Yeah. So I'm weighing this balance, and I also might gain weight. I'm weighing this balance between what I want and what are any potential negative outcomes, and what am I sacrificing for that?
I do that every single day with something.
Yeah,
we all do.
We all do. And so that is the most fundamental aspect of decision making. You're making actions in your environment and saying, is this going to result in something good or bad, and should I do it again? And so when we think about drug use and addiction, drug use is the same process, right? Is this good? Do I want to do it again? Great. But what happens as people take drug over long periods of time is it doesn't just affect how they're processing drug, it affects how their brains process other things. So some of the stuff we've seen in the lab is that what happens is it's not just that the brain is more responsive to drug and drug-associated stimuli. Now, the brain can't process information about alternative, rewarding experiences or negative outcomes.
So does the personality change?
I think a lot of times, I don't do as much work on the human side of it. I think there's definitely cognitive changes that happen in individuals suffering from substance use disorder, and the cognitive changes are actually correlated with how well people do in abstinence. And so basically, drugs cause these transient deficits in cognition and decision making, and in the people where those recover the most, those people have better probably because they say this is bad, I shouldn't do this. And then also, I'm talking about this from a basic science perspective, but there's also the community support, all of these other things, socioeconomic factors that start to fit into this picture once you go into kind of addiction in our communities. But it's way more complicated than just you take drug and want to take drug more. Now you don't value alternative rewarding experiences, and when bad things happen because of your drug use, you don't process those.
And so I think that's excellent in understanding why people have this addiction. I mean, there is a frustration sometimes among families. I did everything and he or she just wouldn't do it. What's wrong with it? Well, it's a deeper understanding. It's not that simple. Let's go to Barry. Barry, good morning. Hi, Barry.
Yes, my name's Barry. I want the viewers to know so that you can get your finger ready to hang me up. If the young lady wants to call me and take and set up in a place that I can talk with her, I was into drugs. I was an alcoholic, and I probably know a whole lot more about it than probably you do. And you, Nick, you don't like taking and receiving the truth, because I've called you before, and I have to take and speak the truth, because when God saved my soul and brought me out of this, I know a little bit more probably about it than either one of you as a person that was indebted to doing these things about 50 plus years, somewhere around 50 years ago.
Okay, well, I mean, that's fine, and it sounds to me like maybe his faith helped him get out of it.
Well, and I think that's a lot of times for people, they're looking for support. They're looking for support somewhere, right? You're in you have a problem, right? And there's a lot of data on kind of my side of the realm on how social aspects influence this. And whether that support be through some sort of religious institution, your church, whether it be through some sort of community building, people who have social networks and support are more likely, in some way, whether it be faith-based or whatever, are much more likely to recover from this. Because,
okay, and here's someone who I assume has gotten better, and I'm happy for him. All right, so I guess this takes us to, and I want to touch more on fentanyl before the show's over, but all right, you just laid out what happens to someone's personality in their brains as they go through this. So the ability to get off it and overcome it. And I don't know if there's much of a difference between this and meth, because I've seen meth addicts that they just can't, I mean, it just doesn't happen for them, and they've tried everything. But I know I have a friend who went through a faith-based rehab program. It was a combination of a lot of elements, and it was successful. And she's doing better now. She was on Suboxone for a while, eventually weaned herself off it, older, in a more stable environment, and is doing well. Now, I think she would say that she could fall off the wagon if the right things hit her, but as long, and she has to have a ban when she goes to the hospital, no opioids if they can avoid it. But she is recovered, and hopefully, like this last gentleman, maybe that works. So how does the recovery process work, and what's the percentage of success rate?
Oh, that's, you know, I should know all of these numbers. I think it depends on the drug. I think it depends on a lot of factors. And so I also have several friends who have had drug problems in the past for a variety of drugs that are also recovered, and they're doing great now.
Right.
I think one thing that we like to do as a society, and again, I don't think it's bad, is we want the magic bullet. What is it? We want to take the pill and we want to be cured, whether it be pain, anxiety, whatever, all of these things. And here's the thing, I'm a pharmacologist. Medication is critical to our society. And if you're depressed, anxious, you should seek treatment. These things are important, but they're part of a bigger picture of how we recover from something, right? You don't just take the pill and sit at home. What you need to do is why did you take this in the first place, right? What was it driving your drug use? And watching a lot of my friends go through these recovery processes, it's really important to have them, you know, they go to therapy, they talk to people, their family. Are there people in your lives that are not contributing to your recovery journey? And I think the people who are successful kind of have this joint approach of, are there things like Suboxone? Are there things like Chantix for smoking, nicotine patches that can help me on my journey initially, but then how do I maintain this over long periods of time? And maintaining some behavior for a long period of time is going to be...
Yeah, it's hard.
Yeah, it's hard.
So the Suboxone, so you start taking the Suboxone, but then you have to go, the therapy was where, you know, she went away, and they say it can be up to 6 months. I think she was there several months. It's inpatient. They started getting her off what she was on. She had to go through some withdrawal, then they started giving her the Suboxone, counseling, talking. She's away from it, different environments.
Well, I think this is the biggest thing. The thing that is most predictive of people recovering is if they can get out of the environment. So what we know from basic science work is that the things that trigger relapse in really controlled systems are environments that were associated with drug taking, individuals you took drug with before, and drug paraphernalia. So maybe things you use to prepare a drug, things like that. And so if you have the means to get out of your environment, go somewhere else, move, start over, those people do really well. The problem is we don't have a lot of support for that. And so how does somebody, and actually let's talk about too, like what happens to these people? You talked about people with marijuana being incarcerated. Okay, well now you come out of jail. What do you do? And so there's some really great treatment centers in the Nashville area. So Mending Hearts is one that's actually not too far from here. That's an inpatient treatment center. What they do is they actually provide free treatment for women recovering from addiction that are coming out of jail. They try to help them get back on their feet. They have, I think they let them live there for 2 years, which is insane.
Awesome.
Because most places are much longer. Insurance doesn't cover this, and so people are successful when we allow them, when we use the research to guide how we treat these individuals. The problem is we need to be better at supporting it as a community.
Yep, and you have to have more treatment. That's the thing. And the sheriff now with the new jail here in Davidson County has a whole section of the jail now for drug treatment. Because he goes, what's the point of locking up someone who's been busted for maybe opioids? They're in here, then we let them out, they go right back to it. So they try to help them first.
So in behavioral science work, one of the things that we do is you talk about punishment. So punishment is reducing an unwanted behavior by doing something, giving something bad. So you think of this as spanking a child, but one of the really fundamental things about punishment is it does not work. It only suppresses the behavior when the punishment is present. As soon as you remove it, it comes back because you did nothing to change what was driving that behavior.
And that addiction is still there, so it's not going to stop them. When they get out, they get right back to it. Let's go to Chris. Chris, good morning. Hi, Chris.
Good morning. Hi. I have a quick question for you. So my name is Chris. I work with the unhoused population in Nashville. And so as that is growing, we see a lot of that being mental illness and drug addiction.
Yep.
With those drug addictions, we're seeing a lot more fentanyl being injected into the drug scene. What do we need to look for as individuals helping others on the unhoused community? And of course, we've seen a lot less resources on, like you just said, getting him into facilities because of insurance issues.
Yeah, so I think the things
Thank you.
Yeah, I wish I had all the answers.
What to look for?
What to look for is really difficult, because essentially when you have a lot of times with drug addiction, you have comorbid mental health disorders too. So looking for that is, I think, a big thing in individuals. Are people taking drug because something else also needs to be treated? And one
They're
of the
self-medicating, and so okay.
That's a big thing, but also too, just like talking about insurance and when you have a disorder that's characterized by people losing their jobs, interfering with their daily life, they don't have insurance. So the only way to solve a problem like this is for the community to come together and say, this is an important problem for us. Because here's the thing, when you have a drug company, who are they going to make money from? If they develop these drugs, who are they going to charge? People, if the people don't have insurance. So this has been a kind of big burden for addiction research, is how do we fund this? How do we fund this when we have a sector of our community that's suffering, but those people don't have the financial kind of capital to then incentivize development? And so the government does this, but not to the extent that it does with other disorders that have burdens, financial burdens.
You've said that. We see that all the time. Yeah, there's no easy answer for him then. And we're going to go to the break, but I mean, what do you look for? And if he sees it, I guess he tries to take the steps to, I don't know, as you said, there are some facilities that will take individuals if they're willing to go.
Right.
But I don't, that's just hard. I mean, you're dealing with the issue of homelessness, probably a mental illness, as he said.
Yeah.
And then on top of it, they're being exposed to fentanyl. It's just, we'll take a break on that note, and we'll come back, try to address that and a bit more in our final segment with more calls as well, right after this.